Then on Sports Central, we go for our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the South Carolina Gamecocks. A team that went 8-5 overall in the 2022 season. Not a bad season for South Carolina. This team improved dramatically over the course of 2022, and they ended out the season hot with wins over Tennessee and Clemson. But how this team be in 2023 and whether or not this team could be even better in the 2023 season is what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video, starting out with a quick recap of 2022. This team was 8-5 overall, and you look back to after November 12th's matchup against Florida. I mean, this team got beat 38-6 against Florida, and they were in a tough position. I mean, it looked like with two brutal games coming up after that with Tennessee and Clemson, I mean, it looked like it could have been a tough end of the season, but turns out this team beat Tennessee, ending their college football playoff hopes, and it wasn't even close. Beat them 63-38, and beat Clemson on the road, a tough place to play. I mean, Clemson rarely loses at home, and South Carolina went in there and got the win 31-30. So they finished out the regular season at 8-4 and got to play Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl, which was an outstanding matchup. This team really hung in there and put up a fight, but Notre Dame got the win in the end 45-38. But you consider early on in the season, I mean, this team started out the season 1-2, had a disappointing loss to Arkansas and got destroyed by Georgia. But then after that, they bounced back, a couple of dominant wins, beat Kentucky on the road, which Kentucky, that was a solid win going there and beating them by 10. Beat Texas A&M, also an impressive win, lost to Missouri 23-10. So, I mean, this team was solid over the course of 2022. I mean, they improved significantly as well. To see them, I mean, for them, I don't know what clicked after that Florida loss. I mean, you would think this team would be down and out after a loss like that, but it was the exact opposite. This team had excellent wins, just outstanding wins against Tennessee and Clemson. So a great finish to the season for South Carolina, but let's take a look into 2023 now. Your roster preview heading into the season. Spencer Rattler is coming back, the Oklahoma transfer quarterback. First season for him with South Carolina wasn't bad. He was excellent at the end of the season. I mean, to see the way that he played in that Tennessee game, he's got so much potential. We saw that at Oklahoma, the potential and the upside that he has as a quarterback, but then Caleb Williams took over and he was kind of lost from there, and then he transfers to South Carolina. Kind of a bumpy start to the season, but the way he played against Tennessee, we have seen the ceiling that Spencer Rattler, I mean, he's got so much potential as a quarterback. He's just so inconsistent as well. I mean, we'll see if he's able to be more consistent in 2023. That would be huge for this offense if he's able to. But 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 12 picks, 66% completion rate overall in 2022. I mean, that's an okay stat line, but once again, you consider the way he played against Clemson, Tennessee, and I mean, putting up a fight against Notre Dame. I mean, Spencer Rattler has shown his potential, and he just needs to be more consistent in 2023, and this team could be excellent. The backfield does lose both Marshawn Lloyd and Jaheim Bell, so the top two in the backfield are both gone. Marshawn Lloyd, 700 yards last season, 11 touchdowns. Jaheim Bell, right around 500 yards, 5 touchdowns. So the backfield does need to rebuild just a bit, losing both of them. And also the receiving core is losing a few. Antoine Wells is coming back, which last season he put up just over 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. But otherwise, Jalen Brooks is gone, Josh Vann is gone, Austin Stogner's back to Oklahoma. So the second, third, and fourth in the receiving core are all gone. So there is a little bit of rebuilding that will need to be done. There's going to be some changes in the backfield and in the receiving core, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, if this team could return those skill players with Spencer Rattler coming back, I mean, this team could be very dangerous offensively. But because of those losses, there are a few uncertainties offensively for this team. So we'll see how they're able to handle that. They also lose 3 on the O-line, so the offensive line could be we'll see if they can be strong in 2023. Defensively, there's a few losses, 2 on the D-line, 2 linebackers, and 3 in the secondary. So you consider this team's improvement in 2022. It would be huge if this team could return more of their players. I mean, improvement is definitely something to keep an eye on from the previous season and predicting a team for the next. And this team, I mean, if you look at the improvement, this team could be a contender in 2023, but the problem is a lot of these key players are all gone. I mean, this team has got a few transfers coming in, but there's also a lot of players that are leaving in the transfer portal. So there's definitely a few concerns for South Carolina with the returning production, and this team isn't quite like Georgia or Alabama or even Ohio State, who are able to rebuild so quickly because of their excellent recruiting. South Carolina's got good recruiting, but it's just not on the same level as one of your top powers like Georgia or Alabama. So what is the ceiling for this team? I mean, they've got some uncertainty for sure. They've got potential. Once again, Spencer Rattler, if he can play consistently, this team can be a contender for sure. But the ceiling, we'll see what happens with some of the skill players if this team can rebuild and if they have still some good depth, which I do think this team in some positions does. I think this team definitely could be a contender in the SEC, but it's just there are a few question marks that definitely need to be answered. But looking at the transfer portal and recruiting now, Braden Davis is off to Syracuse. Marshawn Lloyd, running back, is off to USC. He was the top in the backfield this past season. Jaheim Bell was the second in the backfield. He's listed as a tight end, and he is headed off to Florida State. Trey Knox, tight end, is coming in from Arkansas. Joshua Simon's also coming in for the tight end position from Western Kentucky. Austin Stogner is leaving again. He is off to Oklahoma. He actually came in from Oklahoma with Spencer Rattler heading into last season, but he's headed back to OU. Eddie Lewis, receiver, is coming in from Memphis. He's listed as a wide receiver 2. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a little bit of playing time this upcoming season. And then Jordan Birch, edge rusher, is off to Oregon. Otherwise, Gilbert Edmond is off to Florida State, edge rusher, and you bring in Jaron Lewis from Ole Miss. Tyrese Ross, RJ Roderick, and then Anthony Rose. All three safeties, all these guys are in the transfer portal. So you're losing several in the defensive secondary here. Defensive tackle Nick Gargiulio is coming in from Yale. Jordan Davis, offensive tackle, is off to South Alabama. And you bring in Sidney Fugar from Western Illinois. Recruiting-wise, I mentioned it's actually pretty good, and it definitely is. This team is 16th in the country, but still 7th in the SEC. The SEC is the elite conference of recruiting, that is for sure, considering South Carolina is 16th in the country, which looks pretty good, but it is still 7th in the conference. But got 11 4-stars coming in, 12 3-stars, so definitely adding some depth with the recruiting. And on the future forecast meter, I got this team at a 6 out of 10, which basically is saying there's a 60% chance of a bright future for this team. I do think this team is headed in the right direction. I mean, you look back on the past few years, this team has been down, especially when Muschamp was the coach of this team. They did make it to a bowl game or two, but that was about it. Shane Beamer, though, has been excellent so far with this program. He had 7 wins in 2021, 8 last season. You looked at and you saw the improvement of last season as well. That does bring me optimism about this team, despite some of these key losses that this team is facing as we look forward to 2023. I've got this team at a 6 out of 10 just because I'm cautiously optimistic, once again because of a few of the key losses. But I think the future in general is bright for this team, especially with Shane Beamer as the head coach. He's had some definite success with this team so far. But that said, let's look at the schedule as we look forward to 2023 now. So you got North Carolina in week 1, and I'm just going to preface this by saying this schedule is brutal. South Carolina just cannot catch a break with the tough schedules, and it obviously does not help when you're having to play Clemson every season. But this year you got another tough non-conference game, and this one is against North Carolina, a team that I expect to be one of the top teams in the ACC. Both North Carolina and Clemson should be 2 of the top 3 teams in the ACC this season. So you got North Carolina in Charlotte, then Furman at home after that. Road trip to Georgia. Mississippi State's at home. Tennessee's on the road. You got Florida at home after your bye. Missouri on the road. Texas A&M on the road. Jacksonville State to start out November. Vanderbilt at home. Then Kentucky at home. And then Clemson at home to finish out the regular season. So your last 4 games are at home, which is nice. Your road games primarily come in the middle of the season. You've only got 4 road games. Well, you got 5 if you include the North Carolina neutral location game. But it is a brutal schedule. I mean, if you look at the teams otherwise, you got to play Georgia. You got to play Tennessee, Texas A&M. I mean, Kentucky could be decent. Even Missouri on the road. Don't sleep on them. So it's definitely a difficult schedule for this team. Let's look at the first 4 games. I'm going to pick North Carolina against South Carolina. I was favoring the Gamecocks this past spring, but looking back and looking further into North Carolina, Drake May, that's a team that I like quite a bit. I do think North Carolina wins that game. A close game, probably one of the best games of week 1. honestly could be the best, but I'm going to pick North Carolina there right now. I just think they're the more solid team, and especially with some of the inexperience that South Carolina is going to be facing in the earlier parts of the season, I do want to take the Tar Heels there. Furman, you beat them easily. Georgia on the road, I'm taking the Bulldogs there. I do think, Georgia next season, the way they're looking, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they win their 3rd straight national championship. That team has taken over as the power of college football. Alabama definitely is up there as well. But Georgia, as of right now, with their back-to-back national championships, they're the top power in college football right now. And so I'm taking the Bulldogs there. It's also a road game. It's going to be tough. Mississippi State, I do think you beat them. I don't have much confidence in Mississippi State this upcoming season. I do think you have a solid win against them there in week 4. So you're 2-2 to start the season. Then you got a tough one going on the road to Knoxville to take on Tennessee. I'm favoring the Vols there. Joe Milton is not the same as Hendon Hooker, but Joe Milton is showing the same potential, and he has shown the same potential that we first saw in Hendon Hooker. So we'll see what Tennessee can do. I like the direction that they're heading, and I'm going to take Tennessee there especially. It's a brutal place to play there. So you're heading into your bye with a 2-3 record. You come back, you face Florida. This was a team that you had a bad showing against last season, but got them at home this time. I think you beat Florida coming off of the bye week as well. So that puts you at 3-3. Then Missouri on the road. This is a game where I do think South Carolina, it's very winnable. They're probably the more talented team, but Missouri is also headed in the right direction. They improved quite a bit over 2022, made a run at the end of the season to get to bowl season. I'm going to favor Missouri there, actually. I think Missouri in that point of the season, I think that will be a solid win for them, and it's a road game too. Kind of a dangerous game there for the Gamecocks. I'm going to take Missouri. And then Texas A&M on the road. Texas A&M is a really talented team. They disappointed so much in 2022. I do think they are going to be better in 2023. They finally get it together, at least to some extent, and they do beat South Carolina there. So you're 3-5 heading into November. Once again, just a brutal schedule in the first couple of months. Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, both definitely winnable games. You win both of those. Honestly, November isn't a terrible month. Once again, you got all 4 games at home, which is definitely a great thing. Kentucky, you got them after that. I think you beat them, and Kentucky could be a solid team. Anywhere between 7 to 9 wins for them, I think. So that puts you at 6-5 heading to the Clemson matchup. You got Clemson at home, and you beat them last season. So this is a winnable game here, I think, for South Carolina. But Clemson next season, that is going to be a tough team. I think Clemson is going to be all the way back in 2023. They've kind of had a down past couple of years. But I think Clemson, I like the direction that they're heading. With Cade Klubnik, I do think that he can get it done for this team. DJ Uiagalelei was just not the guy. And Clemson is going to be much more experienced in 2023. I do like them to win that matchup, and South Carolina finishes out the season at 6-6. Your range, I've got this team with a ceiling of 9-3. I've got this team actually relatively low on the range that I'm predicting. So the floor is 5-7. I've got this team predicted at 6-6. The floor is only 1 game lower than that. I just think it's a really tough schedule, and this team is, just some of the inexperience and a brutal schedule, especially at the start of the season. I just think the schedule sets up brutally for this team, and it's kind of been that same case the past few years. When South Carolina has shown some promise, it's just been a brutal schedule. Once again, it does not help that you're having to play both Clemson and North Carolina, 2 of the top teams in the ACC. Clemson could be a national contender. Even North Carolina could be a dark horse. So it's just a terribly brutal schedule. 6-6 I got for the prediction. Ceiling is 9-3, although I do think that is somewhat unlikely. I think 7-5 and 8-4 is also likely. If you pick up that win against Missouri and even against North Carolina in week 1, that already gets you up to 8-4. So I do think there's going to be a pretty wide range for this team. 5-7 is the floor. 4-8 I've got listed in orange on the right there on my range, just because I do think 4-8 is the worst. I think 5-7 is the worst possible record for this team, but 4-8 I'll put that in orange just in case. But yeah, 6-6 is where I've got for this team. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. I know maybe a disappointing prediction, but it's just the inexperience and the brutal schedule. But I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll catch you on the next one.